Damaged by Please Dial 123, Chapter 19. Death is swift. Naruto sipped his tea softly as he gazed at the red horizon. The sunset had been bloody red this evening. Soft footsteps notified him that of his wife's arrival. Sai sat down next to him quietly and stayed silent as he drank his tea. For about half an hour they sat together silently. When the sun vanished fully, the night fell, and they watched the fireflies light down by the pond in his garden. Naruto, Sai started hesitantly. He looked over at her and raised a brow. She was wary around him, but he showed her nothing but respect, and he did respect her. She had given up her life for her village, and that earned some respect at least. Why did you not get an eye transplant after you lost your eyes? You could probably have done it with seals and your demon somehow, or if that didn't work, why not just ask your demon to grow you a new one? Naruto turned back to look at his garden. He stayed silent long enough for her to start to shift. Finally he spoke. I need a reminder, he said, covering his eye patch with one hand. A reminder? She asked curiously. A reminder of the cruelty of this village? Before I lost my eye, I would have died for them. All I had ever done was smile for them, work for them, and love them. I had been tortured and hit and glared and spit on, but I had preserved and still loved them. But then they took away my eye. As a child, I'd never had anything to call my own. My apartment was always looted, so I could never own anything. The only thing I had was my body, my heart, and my soul, and I had decided those were all I needed. As long as I had those, I would be fine. But then they took my eye. They did so painfully, torturing me in the process, both mentally and physically. They took something from me that I had never thought they could. They took part of my sight, something I had always prided about myself. It had been the turning point. I had bared everything, making me truthfully see for the first time, pushing forwards the truth. They truly hated me. I had pushed aside the feelings of despair and hate. I had bared their cruelty, but they tipped the scales, and all those shoved aside emotions flooded out. I realized that nothing I would ever do would please them, make them love and admire me. They showed me how cruel humans could be. I gave and gave and gave. I took nothing, asked for nothing, but gave everything, and they took and tore and broke. They tortured a child because they thought him a demon. They tortured a child to the breaking point and cut out his eye, laughing as he did so. Sai stared aghast at his words. He clenched his fist around the eye patch and hunched slightly, bared. They broke me, he snarled. They damaged me. Naruto was slightly surprised, though he didn't show it, as he felt the soft lips press against his as he entered the second floor. Sai slowly ran her hands over his chest and kissed him. When she pulled back, he looked at her with nothing but an odd mix of apathy and curiosity. She looked away a moment. Just one night, she whispered. Let me be a faithful wife for one night. Let me feel like a beloved wife for one night. One night, she nodded, swallowing thickly. I know you won't love me or come to love me. You may come to be content, but there won't be love. Please, just let me pretend there is love for one night. Naruto looked down at her bowed head. Then he used the hand to tilt her head up and kiss the side of her mouth. One night. I can pretend for one night, he said, voice thick with acted kindness and love. Naruto gazed at the wall of the evacuation tunnel he stood in. Sarutobi sucked in on his pipe, and the embers lit up slightly. Naruto held up his lantern higher and gazed at the uneven stone. So you can use strengthening seals? It could be done, Naruto remarked. Perhaps. How long should it take to strengthen the tunnels? All of them? A day. I can use Kagenbunshin. Good. I had a few other seals in mind also. More defensive ones or some offensive ones. The Hokage paused, put in some more stuff in his pipe before setting it between his teeth. Both. We'll need both. Naruto gazed at the crowds entering the large stadium. He eyed a few more suspicious figures, but left them be. Besides him stood two of the top Anbu. Naruto pointed out every feature that didn't smell right or he knew was suspicious. When the crowds finally died down, the Anbu nodded to him. Your orders are to help with anything you deem worthy. Keep an eye on the rookies. The Hokage says it should happen after the last round if we're lucky, the bare-masked Anbu said coolly. Of course, Naruto remarked, an odd smirk corking his lips. You will be by his side. Yes, we will not leave him, even if he orders us to. Good, Naruto said, standing and brushing his shorts off. Because if you do, I will kill you myself. He punctuated the message with a shot of killing intent and a fierce glare. The two stiffened at the threat. I believe we will let you, The second Ambu said simply. They didn't like one another, but they shared a mutual goal, the protection and safety of the Hokage. Neji licked his lips nervously from his position across from Naruto. Naruto rested the spear on his shoulder lazily as he shifted his weight, eyeing the so-called Hyuga genius. Finally, Neji launched at him, fingers aimed at his heart. Naruto sidestepped in a movement too fast for most to see. He continued to dodge every hit, spear never leaving his shoulder and nothing but his feet ever moving. Finally, Neji paused, panting as he grit his teeth, arms hanging loosely. Naruto inspected his nails mockingly. "Fight me, damn it!" Neji snarled. Naruto looked up at him and smirked in a condescending way. Neji snarled in fury and launched at him again. Naruto lashed out finally. Neji stumbled back, barely avoiding being gutted like a fish. He still clutched at a cut on his stomach. He stared in shock. Naruto's movement had been fast. Neji snarled again and launched him forward again. The cut small enough not to hinder him. Naruto flipped backwards and threw his spear away, the weapon lodging in the ground a few feet away. His hands flashed and Neji was knocked a few feet back, hitting the ground. He groaned but quickly scrambled back to his feet. Naruto let his feet shift apart and his hands come up in an open palm position. "Come at me then." Neji did so with vigor. Every strike, though, was blocked and returned. The older teen even revealed his absolute defense, but it did no good. Naruto was too fast for him to activate it before his attacks. After 5 minutes, Neji couldn't stand anymore. Naruto was declared the winner. "How?" Neji asked as he gazed up at the sky from the ground. Naruto pulled his spear from the dirt and glanced at the teen. Ninja lives their whole lives under masks. Outward appearances, paths, and rumors are never to be trusted when talking of ninja. I was once labeled the dope, but if one listened to that, they would die before they even tried to laugh at me. You're labeled a genius, but there are others stronger than you. They just hide it." Naruto watched as Hinata fought viciously against Kankuro. Shikamaru had surrendered to Tamara in the end. Hinata wasn't planning to do that though. She wasn't fighting for all it was worth and doing a very good job of it. She could see the chakra strands attached to Kankuro's puppets and she could easily destroy them. The puppet juicer was losing quickly. In minutes he was done. Sakura and Shino's match had been interesting. Shino's bugs would break him from her illusions, but she was still confusing him enough to get in a few hits. Shino was better than her though, as he had been taking his training seriously for longer than her. She lost in the end. Sasuke was finished off just as quickly by Gaara. Even with the training from Kakashi and from himself, he had no chance against the Jonin level Genin, and he knew that. He'd put on a good show, dragging the match out before giving up when Gaara's hand wrapped around him. Naruto watched as Sasuke and Gaara were cheered for. He scanned the crowd, and knowing it was almost showtime, he saw feathers rain down over the stadium and just smirked. As the civilians slumped over, the Otonin appeared. Naruto grabbed the Tenten girl and pulled her aside as a kunai lodged in her chair. She gasped in shock. He threw her towards Lee and Neji. Naruto saw blood splash as Jonin in the crowd took an Otonin on. Naruto felt his blood start to pump and his pupils dilate. He could smell blood and battle in the air and hear the clash of steel and just injutsus. "Showtime, children," Naruto said, a bloodthirst grin spreading over his lips. He saw more than a few flinch away from the expression. He cracked his knuckles, claws flexing. His spear shifted in his arms. "What's going on?" Hinata yelled out, the sound of explosions over near the Konoha wall. It's wartime, children. Make yourself useful," Naruto said, smirking at them. He lashed out with his spear just in time. The Otonin sneaking up on their left choked and fell to the ground, head rolling away. Yuno gasped, covering her mouth with one hand and looking green. Sakura and Sasuke ignored him to launch into attacks themselves. As Naruto watched, he realized their training had paid off, and he also realized they had teamwork down. "The schools, building hospitals, and civilian tunnels need protection," Shikamaru said from the right. "We need to split into teams and go help where we can." "Right," the other rookies chored. Determined, but still very shaken and panicked. Naruto was surprised they had gotten so organized quickly and adjusted to the new war so quickly. But then again, Shikamaru was quite smart. "Naruto will go," Shikamaru started after he finished the other teams. "No," Naruto said curtly as he decapitated another ninja. "I already have an assignment." "Fine," Shikamaru said. "Let's go." The rest of the rookies vanished. Naruto laughed almost hysterically as he tore through the groups of enemy nen. His spear had been sealed, and all he used were his bare hands and claws. Rivers of blood ran over him, and every part of him was drenched in death. 2 minutes later, he found himself standing over a bunch of mutilated corpses. Gaara stood next to him, an odd smile on his lips and blood on his face. Temari and Kankuro panted behind them. Naruto was about to leap off to find some more opponents when he felt the ground shake. A large 3-headed snake crashed through the main wall. Naruto scowled at it. Then he pulled a scroll from his sleeve and flicked it open. He unrolled it. A long series of black, red, and blue inked designs spread across the scroll. Naruto ran his finger over them till he came to a certain one. He gave a wide grin and slammed his palm into it. He heard the snake give a scream of pain as his offensive seal for that district got activated. A large current of electricity had just fried the poor thing. Naruto straightened as he heard a crackle on the radio hidden behind his ear. "Uzumaki," came the crackling voice of the bear Anbu. "We have a problem. Get your ass up here." Naruto tossed the scroll to Gaara. "Press out the red ones to activate the defenses, then experiment with the blue ones if you wish. They only activate with demon chakra though, so draw on some of Shukaku's. The black ones are just connecting lines. Ignore them." "Of course." Gaara smirked. Naruto spun his spear and resealed it in his wrist. Then he headed for the top of the stadium and the newly appeared large purple barrier. He landed on the roof next to the Anbu team. Naruto snarled as he saw the Hokage inside, trapped with Orochimaru. "The hell? You said you would stay next to him." Naruto snarled viciously at the Anbu. "The attack was unexpected," the Anbu said bitterly. "He didn't have 2 guards. He had 4. Naruto sneered and looked at the barrier. His eyes blew wide as he saw the 2 first Hokages being summoned. "We need to get in there now," he said coldly. The bloodthirsty grin and out-of-control emotions were gone. All that was left was icy dead seriousness. He ripped the scroll from his pockets, and along with the brush, he slashed his arms with his own claw and made sure Kyuubi wouldn't heal it. He ran his brush over the wound and quickly started to write on the scroll. He could already see the barrier was strong. It had 4 corners, each fueled by a live person and their chakra, and each had a curse seal. This would be tricky. "Can't you go faster?" Dambo demanded, eyes glued to the fight. "No, you're welcome to try if you wish, but oh, I forgot. You don't know how do these seals work?" Naruto said deadpan. He did pick up space though, the seal slightly more sloppily, but still workable. Finally he finished. He tossed the brush away and lifted the scroll. "When I say go, run straight at the barrier," Naruto said seriously. Dambu slid into position and he stood. He made a one-handed sign in front of his face and held the end of the scroll. With a flick of his arm, the scroll sailed through the air and laid flat against the purple barrier. The paper was burnt instantly, but the bloody seal started to glow and stayed behind even when the paper turned to ash. Naruto did 27 rapid hand seals. When he reached the last one, a huge discharge of chakra rocketed the area. The purple shield shimmered and the 4 people on each corner screamed in pain as the control over the jutsu was ripped away from them, almost completely draining the chakra. "Go!" Naruto barked curtly. The Anbu leapt at the barrier. It shimmered when they were about half a foot away from it. They shot through it like it was nothing. Naruto still held his hands locked in one sign. The 4 corner people kneeled panting as the Anbu shot by them to help the Hokage. Naruto took a deep breath but didn't move. His seals were still active, and though the Anbu had passed through the barrier, Even though the Anbu had passed through, the barrier wasn't completely down. It would take an extra moment. Slowly each seal started to fade, meaning they had finished their job and started dismantling the rest of the barrier that was no longer visible. As the last vanished, Naruto shot off into the newly formed forest. He darted between the large trees and over the pods and piles of mud. He pinpointed the Anbu's location and dropped from the trees into a clearing created by fighting. He froze. The air was suddenly too thin to breathe. He was choking. His mind spun and his heart beat was much too loud. For a moment, all sound died and everything vanished. Blood pounded in his ears and all the blood on his skin felt itchy and sticky. His clothes felt so warm and heavy. He couldn't breathe. Sometimes I wonder what you will do after I die and you have no loyal ties to anyone. Naruto couldn't tear his eyes from Sarutobi's smiling face. His feet somehow brought him to the dead man's side. The Anbu stepped aside silently. Naruto barely felt his knees hit the ground. He kneed over the old man and reached out, hand trembling. He paused millimeters from the man's face. He couldn't be dead. Not the man who had saved Naruto from himself. Not the man who had treated him so lovingly. Not the man who had saved him. Not the man who had cared for him. Not the man who had become his grandfather. Naruto's arm slipped beneath his neck and lifted him gently. His other arm wrapped around his other shoulder, and he hugged the cold corpse close. The man was still smiling. Naruto stared at his face, and for a moment the world was empty. He was all alone. His only protector was gone. The only person who had been kind enough to secure his loyalty was gone. Something snapped. Everything was rushing back. All his memories of the man bombarding him, and his already damaged mind cracked a bit more. No, 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 he screamed. You can't be fucking dead. You can't! Ambo pulled him back as he screamed at the dead man's corpse. You can't be dead! He screamed hysterically. Not you! No, 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 no! He screamed incoherently at the man for a few minutes, shouting obscenities and curses, pulling weakly at the arms holding him back. Finally, he slumped, panting, and didn't fight against the hold on his arms. He started to laugh. You're dead, he giggled. You're dead. He felt his throat close up and his lone eye sting. A brief flash of pain went through his right eye socket. He clutched at the eye patch. He's dead, Naruto breathed quietly. He sacrificed his life to seal Orochimaru's hands and the puppet Hokage's, the Anbu said softly. He's dead. Come, Uzumaki, the war's still on. We need to go on. We need to go continue fighting. He's dead. The sharp slap cracked across his cheek. A second Anbu had smacked him. He looked down at the ground. He's dead. Yes, but his people are still alive and fighting. The Anbu barked. Get a hold of yourself. He's dead. They'll pay, Naruto said blankly. His chakra rose and wildly whipped around him, making the other Anbu leap away quickly. He ripped his arms from the hold of the one Anbu, throwing the man back in a tremendous show of strength. He ripped his sleeve off his left arm, throwing the useless material away. As he gazed at his pride and joy, he slashed his arm again, letting the wound open up the veins of blood he would need, and covered the whole steel design in blood. He summoned all his chakra and slammed his hands into a familiar sign. In a huge blast of chakra and anger, he summoned all his fighting creatures. In a huge cloud of smoke, the once empty roof forest now looked like a deadly zoo. Tigers and wolves covered the floor. Birds and beasts hung from the trees. Insects hovered in the air. They moved anxiously, swishing tails and clacking claws and beaks. The Anbu grouped together, backs together, and cautious of an attack. Kill them, he whispered in a deadly tone. Kill all the Otonin. Kill all the enemies. Now! The animals all cried out, letting out roars and calls and high cries. The Anbu covered their ears harshly, hunching over at the noise. Then his animals were gone, ready to rip apart the prey that was making their master angry. Cries, howls, and screams rose all over Konoha as the beasts quickly tracked down their opponents. Human screams rose in a chorus all over the ninja village. Naruto was about to follow them, eye glowing red, fangs poking from his lips, and a malevolent red chakra saturating the air around him. I'll kill them all, he whispered, voice deeper and huskier. I'll rip them to shreds. He didn't make it a single step. A paper sail hit his forehead, and Jiraiya appeared in front of him. Shubi's chakra was stripped from his. His own chakra remained, but he suddenly felt drowsy. He tried to fight the sleep that also fogged his mind, but it was no use. His one eye dropped, and his knees hit the ground again. He fell with a dull thud and looked blearily to his side. His eye met Sarutobi's closed, smiling ones, and then everything went black. GG. End of chapter 19. Damaged by Please Dial 123, Chapter 20, Fits of Depression. Naruto's lone eye snapped open and he sat straight up, spear sliding into his hand. He spun to his left, his weapon glinting. He stopped it a bare hair from the nurse's throat. She choked on her own breath and stood absently still. Naruto gazed around the room quickly. Slowly he pulled his spear away. I was just coming to check on you, she stammered. I'm leaving, he said coolly as he slid from his bed. He quickly found his things and grabbed them. Then he grabbed his clothes and vanished in a swirl of leaves, not bothering to glance at the doctor that had come running into the room. He wasn't staying in that hospital any longer. He'd end up killing everyone. Fury pounded through his veins. He knew the battle was over, and he'd been fucking knocked out for all but the very beginning. He hadn't even been able to kill one person in his brief-filled rage. Now that rage and grief coursed through him. Naruto reappeared on the outskirts of his force a moment after he exited the hospital. He changed in a split second and launched into the trees, newly sandaled feet hitting the branches with a dull thud. He pushed off his first branch and shot through the air in the direction of his tower. As he did so, Akira fell beside him. He glanced at the tiger, noticing how his fur still had a red tint from spilt blood. He covered all his emotions with icy apathy and slowed for his companion. Were any of you hurt in the attack? He asked calmly. The tiger snorted, a soft growl accompanying it. Good. Any dead? Negative answer. Did you kill all the enemy ninja? The tiger's growl/chuckle was enough to answer. Naruto's lips spread in a humorous grin. At least he had some form of revenge. Good. 20 minutes later, Naruto was entering his tower. As he did so, Kiyomaru swooped down on him. Naruto-sama, he breathed, hovering around Naruto and looking him over. I was worried. Naruto shoved Kiyomaru away from him, slamming the boy into the wall where he lost his air. He held the teen's collar, pinning him to the hard wall. No one is to enter the tower. Don't disturb me. Kiyomaru nodded, bowing as low as he could as Naruto let him drop. Naruto turned and walked off, brushing past Ai, who was biting her lip. She bowed her head meekly, and he swept past her. He vanished a moment later into his own room. He slammed the door and leaned against it a moment, closing his eyes. Then he slid down the surface to sit hardly on the floor, gripping each side of his head with his hands and hanging his head between his legs. The darkness and silence started to press around him. The world felt so empty, and his heart burned. He bit his lip till he drew blood and clenched his eyes tightly. He noticed his hands shaking with bottled emotions of rage and grief and fury and sorrow. Sometimes I wonder what you will do after I die and you have no loyalty ties to anyone. What would he do? What could he do? Jiraiya clenched his teeth angrily. Fuck the council, he spat. Problems? Kakashi asked, falling in line next to him. Yeah, the council is sending me to retrieve Tsunade. Ah, so they decided she would be the next Hokage? Partly. Sarutobi made an accurate guess of his death. He passed her as his heir. Paperwork to filled and all. Ah, but she won't come easily. Kakashi just smirked at him. Jiraiya growled at him. The copy name paused, though, and a serious atmosphere appeared. Could you take someone with you? He asked. Who? Jiraiya asked suspiciously. If it's the Chiha brat, then hell no. No, I was thinking Naruto, he said hesitantly. Huh. The boy hasn't left his forest in over 2 weeks. After you knocked him out, he fled the hospital, and has he come out? His animals are on orders to kill all who enter. His vassal, the Kaguya, contacted me. He came asking me to try and talk with him or find someone who could. The boy won't even speak to him or his wife. He said Naruto hasn't left his room except for food, and even that's rare. He's wasting away. Jiraiya stopped walking and looked at the sky, sighing. You know, with his will, Sarutobi left me a scroll made with a blood seal. Only I couldn't open it. Inside it told me only I could open it. Inside it told me everything about Naruto. You do know he has some psychological damage, right? Yeah, I know, but all of us do, Kakashi said with a crooked grim smile. Yeah, I guess we do. His isn't that serious, but the serious part is, he's not loyal to Konoha. Sarutobi told me Naruto had always expressed his disgust and detest for this village. He never hid it, he only stayed and protected it because of Sarutobi. I had figured that out, Kakashi sighed. It was quite easy to see. Now that Sarutobi is dead though, I bet the boy is questioning if he should rip this place apart or just leave. I know, Kakashi said grimly. What are we going to do about it? Do about it? There isn't much we can do about it. With his animal army, his chakra capacity, his intellect, and his overwhelming skill, he could probably raze this place to the ground. Just his animals wiped out every single Otonin in the attack, and all the Sannin that didn't listen to Gaara's command to surrender. Even went so far as to hunt the rest down, those who tried to escape. At least it was a blow to Orochimaru, Kakashi said bitterly. Yeah, but it won't keep him down long. If Naruto decided to attack or fight his way out, Orochimaru's forces will attack any he leaves surrendering. So looming in our future is a possible attack from Naruto and a possible attack from Orochimaru. Yeah, so why aren't you planning our defenses right now? Jiraiya pulled a scroll from his pocket. This was left with Sarutobi's will also, a scroll meant for Naruto. The seals on it won't let any but Naruto open it. I'm hoping whatever is in here will help us. And how do you plan to get that to him? You can't enter his forest. His animals seem intelligent enough, so you're leaving our possible fate to some fighting giant animals delivering a scroll that may or may not have Naruto not kill us all. Yep. Sounds good. Naruto looked over the scroll, reading the lines closely. The Hokage had mailed him. He was expressing his wish to have his daughter safely guaranteed. The new Hokage might not keep their ally contract and may order her killed. Naruto would stop that, not because the Hokage had asked him to protect her, but because Sarutobi had given him that duty when he had agreed to marry her. Naruto-sama. Naruto shot a glare at his now open door. Kiyomaru flinched and lowered his head. Akira arrived with a scroll a few moments ago. It's addressed to you. I said no disturbances. It's in Sarutobi-sama's handwriting. Naruto Naruto stiffened, and he was by the teen in an instant. He grabbed it and looked over it. Sure enough, his name was in the familiar scrawl of Sarutobi. Leave. Kiyomaru did so quickly. Naruto examined the seal on the front of the scroll. Blood seal, he muttered. He knew Sarutobi had known at least some sealing. He bit his thumb and dropped some blood on the seal. It flashed. He pushed the nail under the seal and pulled up, breaking it. As he did so, he cried out as he was shocked by a bolt of electricity. He dropped the scroll and stared at it in surprise. Why had Sarutobi made a seal to shock him? Cautiously, he dropped the scroll again. When he wasn't shocked again, he unrolled it. Naruto, I hope that electric shock knocked some sense into you. I may not be alive, but I know what you're doing. You're probably sulking and cursing yourself for not saving me. Well, I doubt you could have. If you didn't, then there was no way you could have, because I know you would travel to hell and back to save me. I know that even if I'm dead, you tried your hardest to save me, so stop sulking. Now, if you are sulking, you have most likely gotten moody. Don't argue. I know you better than anyone else, even better than the Kaguya. You hide your emotions and sometimes you don't feel much, but I know the few emotions you do have very well. Lately, you have probably ignored Kimimaru and Saai and locked yourself in your room. I'm ordering you as your former Hokage to wake up. I may be gone, but there are others who still need you. Just because I'm dead doesn't mean your life is over. My death is just another star in your life. You can't be affected so much by my death. You ignore everyone else. I know you have probably come to the conclusion you have to hunt down my killer, and I won't tell you not to. You wouldn't listen to that command anyway. You always listen to my commands unless it went against my safety or well-being. You'll probably see killing my killer as something that must be done, so I won't even conflict you by ordering you not to. You may think yourself a cold-hearted person, Naruto, but deep down, you're just a stubborn, too wise young man. I know you better than anyone, Naruto. I trusted you more than anyone, Naruto. I loved you like a grandson. Never forget that. But I also loved Konoha, so my last order as Hokage is not an order at all, but a request. Please protect it for me. Tsunade will be the next Hokage. I think you shall find her a good enough person. All I ask is you protect Konoha with her. When she dies or quits, my requests will end, but just for a while longer. While Konoha is still vulnerable, please watch over it in my stead. You don't have to love it or the people. Just do what's best for it. Don't do it for the village or even don't do it for the villagers or even the village. Do it for me, please. I know my death will hurt, just as your death would have hurt me, but death is just the next part of life. Live long and happily, Naruto. Hiruzen Sarutobi. Naruto saw drops of water hit the paper. I'm crying, he wondered aloud, wiping at his eye. Blood was pouring from the lost eye like tears, while real tears poured from his left eye. Naruto hugged the scroll close to him. Sarutobi, he mumbled, no emotion in his voice. You knew me better than anyone, you stupid old man. Why did you go die on me? He rolled the scroll back up and tucked it safely in a stored seal tattooed over his heart. He kept everything valuable there. There wasn't much in the seal. He leaned back against his wall, head resting against it as he stared at the ceiling emotionlessly. All his plans of destroying Konoha crumbled away, leaving his mind empty. Only because you asked, Naruto said softly. Kimimaru. There was silence. I know you're there, he said. Can you please come in here? The door slowly creaked open. Kimimaru slid in and shut the door softly. He saw the tears and dropped to his knees by the blonde. Are you okay, Naruto-sama? He asked in concern. He raised his sleeves and gently wiped the blood and tears away. Naruto reached out and brushed his hands against the bruise on the older teen's cheek. Naruto had punched him the other day when he had bothered him to deliver the Hokage's message to him from the delivery hawk. This is from yesterday. Kimimaru didn't bother to answer. I'm sorry, he said blankly. He gripped both sides of Kimimaru's head and put him close, hugging him tightly. I'm sorry. I've been vicious lately, haven't I? It does not matter, Naruto-sama. I am yours to do with what you wish. I'm sorry. Kimimaru just leaned into him like a pet that wanted love and attention. I'm sorry, Naruto whispered again to the silent room. End of chapter 20.